Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the official launch of the Haven Collective, formerly Catalyst Church. This is an exciting morning. Obviously, it's Easter Sunday morning when we gather to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, but it's also a chance for us to gather and to celebrate the launch of this new experience that we're having together called the Haven Collective. It is a different idea of what church can be. And so you're going to be hearing lots of details about it throughout the morning as we move through. But obviously we want to mainly keep our focus on Easter and on celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. So this is what we are calling our monthly kickoff. And I know that it's the end of March. It's technically March 31st today. But because it's Easter, we wanted to cheat a little bit and hold our monthly kickoff early. And so this is setting the tone for what we're going to be talking about together throughout the month of April. Okay, so the idea behind the monthly kickoffs are that we're going to be gathering all of our Haven Collective people from all over the country, even all over the world. We have some folks who are outside of the U.S. who are part of what we do here. And once a month, we're going to come together, and we're going to introduce a new idea or a new theme that we're going to be talking about together throughout the rest of the month. So today is really about raising some questions and beginning to frame how we think about certain topics. So we are kicking off Haven Collective with the idea of being stuck. And part of that is because many of you know that I just got back from a sabbatical. Before we decided to launch this, I was gone for a couple of months. And during that time, I had the same conversation over and over and over with a number of different people. That conversation was about that feeling of being stuck. So for some people, it was being stuck in a relationship that just wasn't quite working anymore, and they weren't sure what to do with that. Is it time for that relationship to end? Does it just need to be revivified? What needs to happen? Some people were feeling really stuck in a job. They had kind of gotten to a place where they just didn't feel like there was anything else for them to, any way for them to advance, and they didn't really love what they were doing, so they just kind of felt stuck. And for other people, it was even just a more general sense of ennui. They didn't know exactly why they felt stuck, but they just kind of felt like life was not moving forward anymore the way they kind of had thought it would. And so I want to talk about that today with Haven, and it's what we're going to talk about for the month of April. What does it look like for us to feel stuck? Why do we feel stuck? And more importantly, how do we get unstuck? So at Haven, one of the biggest differences between Haven and a more traditional church is that Haven is super participatory. We wanted to make it so that at Haven, if you don't show up, then not only do you miss out, but we miss out because you matter. And your perspective, your contributions, they matter. So we're going to begin this morning with a short conversation. So if you're virtual with us, hopefully you have some folks who are gathered with you that you can have this conversation with. If you're here in person, you're sitting around some tables. That's some great conversation partners there. The question that we just want to start with this morning is thinking about a time that you have felt stuck in your life. Is there a time, maybe that's right now, right? Maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you can remember a time that you got stuck. And then the question that is really a work of imagination, one that's going to stretch us a little bit, is what would your life look like if you could be unstuck? Okay, so we're gonna take about five or 6 minutes to have that conversation together, again, with the people that you're around. But again, I want to say welcome to Haven. We're so excited to have you here. And after the conversation, we're going to sing a couple of songs together. So please take a few minutes, have that conversation. When have I felt stuck? What would it look like if I were unstuck? Today we're going to be in the Gospel of John, which if you've been following along in the buzz, which is where all the song lyrics are and everything, then you have the scripture in there. You can also turn or click over to John chapter 20. The Easter story is one of those, pastors joke that it's tough to preach an Easter sermon because you get one story every year, right? And it's got to be the same. You know what happens, right? But I think in recent years, I've been really captivated by the experience of the people who discovered the empty tomb because of their expectations, right? They, a week earlier, entered into the capital city of Jerusalem with Jesus in a big procession, and we know from the way they acted that they thought that they were about to march into the annals of history as the champions who flanked the conquering Messiah. And of course, that's not what happened. Despite the fact that Jesus told them again and again and again, when I get to Jerusalem, I'm going to be handed over, I'm going to be crucified, and then I'm going to be raised from the dead, they were not prepared for Jesus' arrest. And I get that, right? I can't tell you how many times someone has told me something 3, 4, 5 times, and because it's not what I wanted to hear, because it didn't conform to my expectations, it was just, in one ear and out the other. And then when that thing does happen, exactly the way they said it did, I am enraged and wonder why no one told me in the first place. This happens. Probably some of us have been on the other side of that, where we've told someone something over and over and over, and we know they don't hear us, but we wonder what else can we do besides tell them again and again and again, right? And so this is what happened to those disciples. They could not wrap their minds around the fact that this person that they had come to believe was not only the promised Messiah, but the God that they worshiped, made flesh, had been arrested. And not only arrested, but executed as an insurrectionist. So as someone who was planning to overthrow Rome and the Caesars. And yet he, in their mind and in everyone's mind, failed. And so that's the mindset that they came to on this Easter Sunday, where, again, we know from a story we're going to look at next week in our beacon gatherings, we know that they were actually hiding because they were afraid, because they were followers of the insurrectionists. And it was not out of the realm of possibility that Rome could decide to arrest them as well and crucify them as well. And so they were hiding. They were afraid to be discovered. In fact, the only people who really could get out and about safely were the women. Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, a couple of the other women who followed Jesus around as well, and actually, according to Luke, bankrolled his ministry. These were the ones that, again, sorry, ladies, okay, but because they were women, basically no one cared about them, and they could just sort of go about. And so in the story that we're about to read of the first people to encounter the resurrected Jesus, you'll notice that it is in fact a woman who discovers the resurrection. And so I just want you to hear Mary. This is Mary the Magdalene. That's where she's from, a town called Magdala, so they call her the Magdalene. Mary Magdalene discovers the empty tomb, and then she goes and gets some of the disciples, and we'll see what happens. So this is verse 1 of John 20 and following. Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. And she said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." So again, even when Mary discovers the empty tomb, she does not immediately think, oh, resurrection, just like you said. She thinks someone has done something with his body. And you can imagine the list going off in her head, right? All of the possible reasons that someone would have taken the body. She probably was holding out some hope that Peter and the beloved disciple were like, oh yeah, that was us, we did it because, we wanted to, pay him respect or something like that, right? But of course they were like, oh no, this is bad. And that confirmed her worst fears that something else has happened. So Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. They were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then, they still hadn't understood in the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead, and then they went home. That's it. That's not it. We're going to do more in a minute, but right? For Peter and the beloved, this is it. They don't actually encounter Jesus. They come to the tomb. They see that the tomb is empty. They see that their grave clothes have been folded up very nicely, which doesn't scream grave robbery, right? And then it says that the other disciple, the beloved disciple, believed. I am captivated by this part of the Easter story because, again, it's awesome that later in the resurrection stories, people actually get to see Jesus, and he shows them his crucifixion wounds, and someone even pokes in the spear hole in his side, which I think is super gross. But I guess if you want to be really sure he's not a ghost, that's a ooey gooey way to do it, right? But here in this moment, at the tomb, all they have is possibility. The possibility that the very worst thing that has happened in their lives is not, in fact, the last thing that will happen to them. The possibility that tomorrow could be better than today. The possibility that tomorrow could be better than what they had been hoping and dreaming for. And all we're told is that the beloved believed. And we're going to go back into worship here in a moment. But this is where I want us to hold out for a minute. I asked you in that discussion, right? When you feel stuck, when it feels like you're not getting anywhere, that tomorrow is going to be the same as it was today, that there's really no hope for the future, that the march of days is just one endless slog until your tombstone, it's easy to feel like there's no hope. And the Easter story asks us to consider what if. What if new life is possible? What if resurrection is possible? What if tomorrow could, in fact, be not only different, but better? That's the invitation that's extended to us at Easter. And so I want to return us back into a time of singing together with that invitation in mind. What if that feeling of being stuck in a job, in a relationship, whatever, in life, what if that's not the end? What if there can be something more than that? What would that mean for you? Let's stand again together. So the Gospel of John, I don't want to start any fights here, but I think more than the other three Gospels, is really dense and layered, and reading the last couple of chapters is sort of like watching the finale of a 7 or 8 season TV show without having watched any of the previous episodes. Like, you'll probably basically get it, but you also miss a lot of the nuances. So before we read where Mary Magdalene encounters Jesus as resurrected, I want to just give you a couple of the sort of previously in the Gospel of John's that we would have missed for not, reading the whole thing. So the book of Genesis contains 2 creation stories back to back. The first one is the one that it's like in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and then there's 7 days. On the first day, God says, let there be light, and there's light. That one you go through, and then the 7th day is the Sabbath day. The second one is where God is sort of like Patrick Swayze in Ghost, where he's like making pottery and he forms a person out of clay and then separates that person. You have the man and the woman, and God, he names all the animals and all of that. And that's where the Garden of Eden is and all of that, okay? So John, in his whole gospel, he has done the first creation story. Just like Genesis starts, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth, John opens with, in the beginning was the Word, talking about Jesus, right? And then, in case you're not picking up on that, there are only 7 miracles that Jesus does in John's gospel. And we know that because John counts them. Like after he turns water into wine, John goes, this is the first miracle that Jesus did. And you're like, oh, that's neat. And then after the second one, he goes, this was the second miracle Jesus. And you're like, oh, we're counting. Okay. And then as you count, there are 7. Again, paralleling the 7 days of creation in that first creation story. You get to the final miracle, and that is the thing that actually leads him to get crucified. It's where he raises Lazarus from the dead. And that is the sort of the inciting incident that leads to his crucifixion. And so then his resurrection becomes miracle number 8, right? Which we talked about this actually last Easter if you were with us. If not, we're just real shorthand. It's the first day of a new creation week, which is why the resurrection is on a Sunday, right? The first day of the week. So there's all this symbolism loaded in that really only pays off if you watched all 7 seasons of the Gospel of John or whatever, right? What's happening then in this story is John is playing with that second creation story, where there's a man and a woman in a garden, and that's the beginning of something new and beautiful, which we'll see here in a moment. The other bit that we need to know is there was kind of a whole season of the Gospel of John chapter, but whatever, right? That was dedicated to Jesus as a shepherd. And again, that called back to one of Israel's prophets, a guy named Ezekiel, who was critical of the way the people of God were being led. And so he talked about them as having bad shepherds. And he said one day they will have a good shepherd who will do all this good stuff for them. And so then Jesus comes along and he says, I am the good shepherd. And here's how you know I'm the good shepherd. The first thing he says is that I'm going to lay down my life for my sheep, which, again, just happened, right? He just gave himself up to death on the cross for our sakes. But then the other thing he says is that the sheep who belong to me will know that I am their shepherd because I will call their names and they will recognize my voice, okay? That's the little bit that's important here. That's how we identify Jesus as the good shepherd. So I want to read now, and I want you to pay attention for those two things. That second creation story, man and a woman in a garden, right? And then also Jesus as the good shepherd whose sheep know his name. So this is verse 11 and following. Now remember, Mary had gone to get Peter and the beloved. They all came back. Sure enough, Mary was right. The tomb was empty. Hashtag believe women, right? And then Peter and the beloved leave. And it says, Mary was standing outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head, the other at the foot of the place where Jesus had been lying. No, I don't know where they were when Peter and the beloved went inside. Okay, now they're there. And they said, "Dear woman, why are you crying?" I like how sassy the angels are. Like they don't know why she's crying, right? And she says, "Well, because they've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they've put him." They don't say anything. They're just like, "Oh, okay, thumbs up." So she turned to leave, and she saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Again, people keep asking her this, right? "Mary, why are you so hysterical?" And he says, "Who are you looking for?" Now, she thought he was the gardener, because they're in a garden, right? "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go get him." And then Jesus says, "Mary," says her name, which doesn't make a lot of sense in the conversational flow that they're having, right? But again, he's the good shepherd. And so when he says Mary, she turns to him and cries out Rabboni, which is Hebrew for teacher. When he calls her name, she recognizes him because she's one of his sheep. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go and find my brothers and tell them I am ascending to my Father, to your Father, and to my God and to your God." And so Mary found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord," and she gave them his message. It's a beautiful moment for Mary. And I mean, we shouldn't skip past this, but Mary is in this moment made the first official apostle of the church. The word apostle is a Greek word that means a person who is sent. So if I send you to do an errand, I'm apostling you. But the church used that as an official office, as someone who is officially commissioned to go and tell people that Jesus is raised from the dead. So Jesus himself makes Mary the first apostle of the church and the first preacher of the church. So we should remember that when we talk about ladies in the church, right? They started it, technically. We have this moment where despair turns into hope. Because there is new life, there is new creation, there is new possibility. And again, John has been playing with these ideas of creation language all through his gospel, pulling in all of these different accounts of creation to say that what Jesus is doing is brand new. Not unlike the thing that we're doing here at Haven is something that is brand new. It's something that is so different from what has come before, this Jesus thing, that it is like the difference between death and life, despair and hope. And he invites Mary into the midst of that by calling her name, by identifying her as the one who belongs to him. So, as we look towards this next month, where we're talking about what it looks like to be stuck or to be unstuck, here's the big idea that we're going to hear over and over and over, and that I hope guides our conversations for the next month. The radical change that we see in the world because of Jesus' resurrection did not have anything to do with the state of the world, okay? The world on Monday following the resurrection looked remarkably like the world the Monday after the triumphal entry, or the Monday before that, or the Monday before that. Rome was still in charge. God's people were still oppressed. Things looked the same. The circumstances did not change because Jesus was raised from the dead. What did change, what experienced a radical transformation that can only be described as resurrection, was the people following Jesus. They transformed from fearful to bold. from cowardly to courageous, from hiding to preaching. They are the ones who changed. And that's what I hope we see again and again and again, is that when we will listen for how the divine love that is at the heart of the universe whispers our name, we will recognize that we belong, that there is a place for us, and that we can be changed, we can be made new. And the circumstances in which we feel stuck actually can benefit from who we are and how we are changed. So if I were to make it pithy, I would say God doesn't change our circumstances, God changes us. That's the good news of Easter. And again, it's something we're going to be meditating on, because it's easy to say that in a pithy, fun way, right? But I think it's more difficult to live that out and to really unspool the implications of that in our lives and take that into those spaces where we still feel stuck, those relationships, those jobs, that general sense of stuckness that we can't really define. What does it look like for us to go into those places changed or changing? And so it's in that spirit I want to invite us to receive communion today. If you're in person with us, you have some bread and some grape juice on the tables. If you are virtual with us, I hope that you have something to eat and something to drink. That can be bread and wine. If you want to go real traditional, it can be goldfish and apple juice if that's what you have in the fridge. It doesn't matter. But this communion meal, it's something that we celebrate every time we gather as a way to mark that we belong. You don't have to be a member of Haven to receive this meal with us, because this is not our meal. This is Jesus' meal. It's Jesus' table, and he set the place for us. So the only requirement to receive communion with Haven is that you receive it, that you respond to the invitation that Jesus has set forward for you. Before we receive the communion meal together, I'm going to give us some space to reflect prayerfully on what Easter means for us in a real tangible way. You can do this through silent prayer, but also if you're here with someone that you care about, someone who knows you, it's very acceptable to kind of have a prayerful conversation with them about what your response to this might look like. But what I want to invite you to consider right now is, what does it look like for you to hold on to the possibility that Jesus is not done with you? What does it look like in this next week for you to live as though it's true that God has more for you than what you've experienced so far? I'm going to offer a brief kind of introductory prayer for us. I'm going to give us about a minute of silence, or again, quiet conversation if that's your jam, to consider this. And then I'll pray for all of us together, and we'll receive communion together. So here we go. God, through the power of your Holy Spirit, we ask that you would bring us to your table today. And as we open our hearts and our spirits to hear from you, we ask that you would guide us as we consider what it might mean that there is more that you have prepared for us that we might call new life. Let's pray together. Jesus, you have gathered us today and invited us to your table that we might remember that the worst thing that happens to us is never the last thing that happens to us. that especially when we feel stuck, we are so far from alone in that feeling. And yet it's in those moments that you appear to us and you say our names as a way to remind us that you would never leave us or forsake us. As we approach your table today, we come with all of those anxieties and fears and trepidations that accompany the possibility of hope. We offer them over to you to take for us. And in return, we receive these elements. We pray that as we receive them, they would be a spiritual food for us, that they would enliven our imaginations and stir our spirit so that we can begin to see what you are calling us to and the good work that you have prepared for us to do. Thank you for the incredible privilege we have of being gathered today to celebrate new life and new hope and possibility. And it's in that attitude that we approach your table. So we offer these prayers and we come now in the name of Jesus. The night Jesus was betrayed, this was the meal that he shared. Before we go today, but before we do that, I want to do a little logistics about what's going to be happening for the next month here at the Haven Collective. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is what's called our monthly kickoff, where we do this all together, all live. So we got people in a Zoom room, we got people in the live chat where there's like a whole other church thing happening. I don't know if anyone's been reading along, but it's, probably just should have had those folks preach. And that's honestly kind of the point of why we're doing the things we're doing next. So for the rest of the month, we are going to be meeting in our smaller groups that we're calling beacons to do something that looks very different from today. It's going to be much more about conversation. And so starting tomorrow, you will have a teaching available, and we will put that on all of our social medias. We'll send it out via email. It'll be on the new website, which is thehaven.me, thehaven.me. And it's something called the weekly invite, because in order to get the most out of a beacon gathering, you need to do a little bit of prep work, right? Because you matter, because we want you to be prepared. We want you to have been thinking about some stuff so that when you come, you're ready to share. Because part of the point of Haven moving forward is it's much less about one person's perspective shaping everything and much more about all of us sharing together and learning together. So there's going to be a short teaching. It's like 7 minutes, right? It's like the one I sent you? Yeah, it's like, so, I mean, watch it while you're cooking dinner. Listen to it on your commute. Don't watch. What?
It's pretty good, actually.
Oh, you watched it?
It's almost like you are good at this whole community.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, but so you'll watch that teaching, and then when we get together in our beacons, that'll be a springboard for conversation. But the whole point of the beacon gathering is they're going to be designed to facilitate us communicating together, sharing our perspectives, learning from each other, praying together, and things like that. So there is a beacon for folks who are local to the Northeast Texas area, Rowlett, Garland, Rockwall, whatever. There's also a virtual beacon that for the folks who are online who want to join, and we are going to be continuing to establish beacons over the next few months, kind of all over the place. Anywhere some folks feel like they want to host one, we'll make it really easy to do that, give you a lot of resources and support, and then we'll have as many online virtual ones as we need to, because we want to keep these groups to around 20 or fewer. We want them to be intentionally small, because once they get too big, it's hard to hear from everyone, it's hard to share, and that's again the whole point of this. And then once a month, we all get back together, celebrate, introduce the new theme. We'll kind of hear from some of the different beacons and make sure we all kind of remember we're one big family, and then we go back into the monthly rhythm. So I know that was probably all a little bit confusing. We've been trying to put this out in vocabularized form, like all over. Again, it's on the website, newsletter, email stuff. The easiest thing for you to do right now is to, if you are not sure if you're already connected to a beacon or not, to just sign up for one. So in the Buzz, which is thehaven.buzz/buzz, or if you scan the QR code, if you're here live on the way, and if you scan that, it's in there. There's a whole subheading that says find a beacon. And there's a little Google form that someone with just tremendous graphic design talent must have put together. I don't know who that could have been. But you can just fill that out, and then during this week, we will make sure that you get connected to some beacon or another. If you are a person who is like, wait a second, I think I would like to host one of these, and I want to know more about that, great. Just put a little note in there somewhere, or you can get a hold of me directly, or you can send an email to info@thehaven.me, and we will get you connected there. We just didn't include that because we're trying to start things and build as we go, not try to do a bunch of things half well. So that's the biggest thing. For next week, when you go to church, whatever that means, it means you're going to meet with a beacon, and that can be in person or that can be online. It's going to be a small group. It is not going to be a big sing a bunch of songs and listen to a person. You're going to have already done that ahead of time. What you should expect from the beacons is a lot of face-to-face conversations that will be guided. There will be kind of an order to that. We will have, I haven't decided what to call them yet, maybe like a beacon Sherpa or something, I don't know. Someone who's going to kind of guide it and kind of help the flow go. But yeah, we want to make sure that that we have good, holy, constructive conversations where we get to know each other and we get to hear how we are growing together. Because again, I have to tell you, I think even just the live chat this morning proved that we need more than just one person talking about this stuff. You have so much good perspective that the rest of us need. And so that's the idea behind these beacons, is for us to truly hear what the Spirit is doing among all of us. Okay, I'm sure you have 1,000 questions. That's fine, ask questions, because I've been eyeball deep in this for so long, I forget what everyone doesn't know, and your questions help. So ask questions, reach out, bug people, get the answers you need, because this only works with you. Okay, I think that's all the logistic stuff for now. I am going to hand things back over to the band, and we have one more song, so I'm going to ask you to stand with me, and I think we're going to get a little loud, so yeah, all right.
Only a little bit. Slightly.
Haven Collective, welcome to the new thing. I've been saying again and again, this is a big experiment. So the best thing you can do is communicate with us. Tell us what you like, tell us what you didn't like, all that kind of stuff. Because we are just setting out and building this thing as we go and figuring out how to respond to what the Spirit is doing in our world so that we can be good neighbors to those around us. So as you're going today, Haven, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you're excited about what's next, even though we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, which again puts us in such a similar place to the early church because they were in a similar boat to that. So as you go today, would you go knowing that resurrection means that the worst thing is never the last thing, and that God is doing something new among us that can only be described as new life. So go in the spirit of possibility and hope. Go in the grace and peace of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And we'll see y'all next week in the Beacons.